Okay, friends, today we're going to learn how to paint your color wheel and give you some tips on how to mix your paint and how to paint. Now, this is just a generic color wheel, but you're going to be designing your own. I'm just showing you this for practical purposes. So you will have your pre-designed color wheel. You're going to need a cup of water and your two green brushes and a piece of paper towel. You're also going to need a paper plate with just the primary colors, yellow, red, and blue. And that's it. And just about that much. You don't need very much, just about a quarter size. So you're going to have your paint ready and you're going to have your color wheel ready. And I suggest that you label what color is going to go where so that you make sure you have them in the right order and that you paint in the right place. So I always start with yellow. Then we have yellow, green, green, blue, 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 violet. You can't see this here, but I'm writing V for violet. Then we have red, violet. Then we have red. Then we have red, orange, then yellow, orange. And I'll give you these in order so you can copy them down. Just do it in pencil really lightly. Now, I always like to just get my brush a little bit wet first because it's hard to paint with a dry brush. So just get it wet and then get the extra water off. Now I'm going to start with yellow. See how I just twisted my brush in the paint so that it's kind of at a point? And what you want to do is start behind the line and then push your paint up to the edge so that you know where it's going to go. See how I start behind the line and then I push it up to the edge? I like to do the hard parts first. And if you want to get in a small area, see how I'm holding my brush up and down? That helps me get just the tip of that brush into that tiny little section, and then I push the paint up to the edge and then drag it along so I get a nice, clean, straight line with even coverage of paint. And I keep twisting the paper around to make it more comfortable for my hand. And you see how I have my pinky sticking out right there? That's to help me keep my hand steady. Because if you don't have your hand resting on something, it tends to be kind of shaky. So you either want to rest your hand on the paper, or if your hand's going to get in the paint, sometimes I use my pinky to kind of reach out as like a little stilt, like to help me stabilize my hand. And I always start behind the line and then drag it along once I figure out where the paint's going to go. I like to do the edges first because then I can fill in the middle part. It's easier. And then you kind of want to go over your paint and make sure that it's evenly spread along the surface. So see how I'm going over it just to make sure that the coverage of paint is even and I don't have big glops of paint anywhere. Now we're going to make yellow green. And we get green by mixing yellow and blue. So I'm just going to take a little bit of yellow and see how I kind of smear my brush to get some yellow. And then off to the side, not in the middle, I'm just going to get a little bit of blue because a little bit of blue goes a long way. And that's kind of regular green. So I need some more yellow. So I scoop up some more yellow so it can make it more of a yellowy green. And I kind of smash it around as I mix it. And I can just keep adding more yellow if I need it. And I think that's a pretty good yellow green. So again, I'm going to twist my color wheel around so it's more comfortable for my hand. And then I start behind the line and push the paint up to where I want it. And once it gets there, then I drag it along. I'm going to get a little more paint. And then I just hold my brush straight up and down so that I can get just the tip of my brush in that tiny little corner. And again, I start behind the line and then I push the paint up to the edge. That way I make sure I don't go over the line. And I keep twisting my paper around. And see very carefully, I get that edge so that I don't go into the other section. I'm smoothing out the paint coverage. I had too much paint on my brush, so I kind of blopped some on the paper. Then I come right behind the line and then drag it over so I get a nice clean edge. And then again, I'm going to kind of go over and just smooth all that paint out so that I have even coverage. It's not too thick or too thin anywhere. See how I'm holding my brush flat? So I get a lot of the brush covering the paper to smooth that out. Now we're going to do green. So I'm going to add a little more yellow and just a teeny bit more blue because I want this to be a little more green than the yellow green. And then I just kind of twist my brush in there to mix it up. It looks a little too dark. It needs a little more yellow. It's because a little bit of blue goes a long way, so just start with a little bit at a time. That looks like a pretty good green. And again. Very carefully getting in those corners. Pushing the paint up to the edge, to the line, and then dragging it down. I am going to be looking for you guys to paint neatly with nice clean edges, nice smooth coverage of the paint. Start behind the line and then push your brush up to the edge and then drag it along. I'm going to get a little more paint here, and getting in this corner again, I'm just going to hold my brush straight up and down so I can get just the teeny bitty tip of that brush in that tiny little corner, and I'm barely touching the paper so that I only have that little point of the brush. And then I can be a little bit more loose. And one more little corner. And again, notice how I always put the paint behind the line and then I push it up to where I want it. Now the more pressure you put on the brush, it spreads out. So right now I want it to spread out, so I'm pushing a little bit harder. When you want more detail, barely touch it. Now we're going to do blue-green. So I'm just going to make a little more paint. I'm going to add some yellow and a little more blue. That looks like a nice blue-green, but I want to compare it to the regular green to make sure that it's not too similar. So it looks like I needed a little bit more blue to make a blue-green. See how I twist my brush in there to mix all the paint that got on my brush? Tiny bit more blue. It's okay to just do a little bit at a time and then keep adding. It's better to just do a little at a time until you find the right recipe. Tiny bit more blue. I mix it, I kind of twist my brush in there, tiny bit more blue. Again, a little bit of blue goes a long way, so it's better to just do a little bit at a time and keep adding. That should be good.